What's up, folks, and welcome back to Dyce Reacts, where we are staying in Poland tonight. We are going to be checking out differences between Polish and American houses. I've done one with the same individual, but he's going a little more in depth because it's a little outdated, he said in the intro. Yeah, so I'm curious to see what else he has to say. Very much side checks one out. We ain't gonna waste no more time. We're just gonna get right into it, folks. We're gonna get right into it. Oh yeah.
Let's just get started. And also, who am I? I'm an American who's been in Poland plenty of times now, and at this point I kind of know the differences between the homes there and the homes here, and also the vocabulary with them, which is the first point that I wanted to talk about, which is the vocabulary that we use when we're describing the differences between houses, homes, townhouses, condos, flats, apartments, all of that stuff. So let's just get started with that. And the first difference is going to be with a townhouse. Now, in America, we say townhouse, but with Polish people, when they're especially learning, British English, which is what they're only learning typically, that vocabulary is going to be terraced house, a terraced home. So the difference is that in the US, we call these homes townhouses, and then in Poland and Europe, they're called a terraced house. And then the next one, in American English, this is called a duplex, and then in Poland, what most people are familiar with this one is a semi-detached house. And then in Poland and Europe, this is known as a detached house, and then in the US, this is simply just called a house. And the next one, I wanted to talk about condos, or also referred to as condominiums in the US, and then also apartments or flats in Poland. Now, the difference between apartments and condos in the US is that with apartments, so think of one apartment building, well, that's owned by one apartment company, and there they lease out their apartments to their tenants. And then with condos, each specific room is owned individually by specific people. And I'm pretty sure in Poland, the word condo doesn't really exist. There isn't such thing as condos versus apartments. They're really just known as apartments or flats. So now that this is defined, I wanted to talk about the percentages of who lives where. Now in America, 72% of Americans live in houses, 20% live in apartments, and 5% live in mobile homes or trailers, and 3% lives in RVs, vans, or boats. And then in Poland, around 55% of Poles live in houses, and then around 44% live in apartments. Whoa. And then
I don't know if I saw something similar to those statistics in another video. It's I think I have. I'm not too sure. But I thought it would be the other way around in Poland, that they would have more people living in actual houses than in apartments. This is interesting. So I wonder if the apartment is more affordable. I would assume it's more affordable in Poland. Very interesting.
Let's talk about how big these houses are. So in the US, the average house size is around 214 square meters or 2,303 square feet. But I found that in Poland, the average home was around 100 square meters. So basically in the US, our living quarters are around twice the size that they are in Poland. Now, so the differences between rooms in the US and Poland are actually pretty much the same. There's still a laundry room, there's still, of course, the living room, bathroom, and then, separate bedrooms and all of that stuff. But in Poland, I noticed that there really isn't too many houses with basements. Now, I'm pretty sure that this is based upon the soil, I'm guessing. Either that or it's extremely expensive. So my theory about this is that Poland has a very sandy soil, and typically in places that have sandy soils, you won't find homes with basements. Someone let me know about this down below if that's actually right, because here in the US, this actually depends on pretty much which state you're living in, on whether that's going to have a basement or not. Now, if you go somewhere like Florida or near the beach to a specific area, you're not going to find a house with a basement. The buildings and city heights can only be of a certain limit in those areas because of the sandy soil. So in the US, it kind of depends on if the house is going to have a basement, really just where the area is specifically. Now let's talk about how each house is built in each country. Now in the US, most of our houses are built with a concrete slab or, base layer. Typically they're reinforced obviously with steel, and then upon that base slab of concrete, there is wood structures and wood beams that are then then built up upon that. And it's really just wood. It's also typically really just pine wood. And nowadays the wood isn't as strong as it was before because the trees are being cut down faster. They're really just trying to cut down trees as fast as possible to get this specific lumber. And of course they have to follow a specific amount of years that the tree has to be alive before they cut it. But yeah, for the most part, they're really just trying to cut down the tree as fast as possible. And because of this, older homes were built with much stronger and older wood versus nowadays, most of the homes are built with a younger wood, which is also more susceptible to catching on fire. Now in Poland, from what I could see, is that most of the houses are built based upon a concrete slab or base layer, just like in the US, but the difference is between the housing and the construction is that then the layer on top of the concrete is then usually cinder blocks. And most of these blocks seem to be fairly easy to kind of put together, kind of like a puzzle. And then upon the concrete cinder blocks, usually there's lots of masonry work that's involved in this with filling, you know, the cinder blocks with concrete and masonry and all of that type of stuff. And then I'm pretty sure on top is a wood layer. And then on the roof shingles in the US are kind of like this textured, almost like a piece of like sandpaper, if you kind of think of it like that. And then think of if it was like glued and then you sprinkled a bunch of mini little rocks over. It's kind of like that. That's kind of what it looks like. Typically they're all black, and then versus in Poland, the roofs have kind of like a orange Spanish type of tile. And then, you know, nowadays they're even making lots of homes with black tiles. That's, I think, kind of the newer trend. To me, the new look that's like white on black is kind of like this really cool, sophisticated, neat kind of look, almost like a Japanese house in a way. And then in the US, the sides of the homes are made with a vinyl siding, and really all it is kind of like this hard piece of plastic that basically interlocks with each one. To me, it's nothing special. It's really just a piece of plastic that's interlocked with the others. And then in Poland, it's typically just the masonry layer. I'm guessing it's really just grout on the outside that's simply just painted with whatever color to match. And then inside, a lot of the floors in the US have a hardwood floor, especially on the first level, and then usually the upstairs and or downstairs is typically of a carpet material. Now this really depends because some places people have different preferences, but it seems like a lot of the homes at least have a first layer of hardwood floor, and then the upstairs and downstairs are typically carpet. Versus in Poland, what I notice is that typically the first floor is all made of tiles, and then once you get up to the second floor, it can still be tiles or typically hardwood floor. And so I also have to say that while most houses in the US are constructed of wood, some places in the US, like typically in desert regions, are really just made of cinder blocks and different types of tiles and things like that. While in other places like the Northeast and the New England area, most of the houses are really just made of bricks. So in a lot of cases, it kind of differs on where we're talking about with what the house is constructed of. And so I know a lot of people would say, why would
Yeah, so basically what he's saying there, specifically for the US, I guess there are rules in place as to what kind of structure you can build. I don't think it's just up to the individuals, even if they own the land or whatnot. They can't build any kind of house on certain type of soils or certain type of areas. There are rules and regulations. Yeah. Because where I'm from, anything goes. You could do, as long as you own the land. Even if you don't own the land, you could do whatever you want. You could build whatever you want in the most dangerous of places. Yeah, but in America, I'm guessing it's really restricted based on what he's saying there, and which makes sense actually.
you make your house out of cheap flimsy wood? And my statement to that is, would you build your ship out of rocks? All right, I'm actually just kidding. Like, yeah, some of the homes here are done very badly, and I've been working in construction in residential areas, and some of the homes that I've seen they're really not good from the start to the finish. Like, there's just so many different errors along the process, and then the material is so cheap. So I'm not here to argue with anyone that the houses are flimsier in the US, because really on average they are. So next up, I'm just going to talk about a bunch of different little small things and some fun things as well. So the first one I wanted to talk about is porches. Now in the US, a lot of people will either have like a porch area on the front of their house, or they will even have like this back porch that's on like a full deck, and from there they'll have like their barbecue grill and all of that. Whereas in Poland, it seems like there's more emphasis on the back of the house and having your barbecue and all of that back there. And then in the US, there's this depiction of having a house with a white picket fence, and I wouldn't really say that's true. I would say kind of the opposite's true. Now in Poland, a lot of people are really big on not being able to look into your yard, right? It's kind of like this privacy issue. You know, this is my yard, no one can see in, right? Everyone has these popsicle trees, that's what I call them, popsicle trees, in their yards, and they're going all the way around. So it's like this barrier of like this fort, along with a, you know, typically like a gate that you have to swing open in order to even get into the driveway. So, you know, versus in the US, a lot of people have open properties with no fences on them.
I must say, although the gates or the trees you may use or the barriers you may use, like the way the Polish tile is, from what I'm seeing, although people may not, you may not be able to see the entire view of the house in terms of the way that it is in terms of the build, and sometimes people want to show off how beautiful their house is. So by doing that, kind of like prevents people from seeing the structure of your house. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's even better for safety because no one can monitor your activities if you actually have a barrier that really covers basically your entire living quarters. No one can monitor whether it's someone's home, what activities that are taking place, and all that stuff. So this is very good, especially if someone loves this, not just privacy, but for safety issues. No one's going to be difficult for someone to be looking at you. You know what I mean? Unlike just an open space where everyone can see your every move. I mean, it's just asking for trouble if the wrong person or the wrong people are looking at your environment. So definitely for safety, the Polish concept is very good. It's very good, actually. Yeah, but some people are flashy and they want their house to be seen, how beautiful their house is. So they won't dare to put a fence that's so high. You know what I mean? So it comes at a price. We won't take it back just a bit.
And you could simply just walk up to their front door. So the next up is microwaves. Now in the US, we are pretty much obsessed with them, and if you don't have a microwave, you're probably considered strange because of how popular a microwave is. Every single house I've ever been to in the US, apartment, condo, whatever, has always had a microwave, versus in Poland, it seems like a lot of people don't have microwaves, and most people aren't really for them, and I'm pretty sure there's probably two reasons for that. One being that if you have to microwave your food in order to cook it, it's probably not the best food, and it would taste better anyways if you cooked it, you know, in a pan or whatever. And then also microwaves, you know, for the most part are bad for you because most of the materials that we cook our foods in the US in the microwave are plastics. Yes, we, you know, typically will put all of our food in different plastics, and then we put that and put it right into the microwave, and then essentially you're melting your plastic, and then you're gonna eat that. Now it would be much better option to use like a glass container or, you know, something like that, but most people don't. A lot of people I know always use plastic containers to microwave their foods. So yeah, I would say in most cases it's probably nice to not have a microwave and instead just always cook fresh. And the next one is granite countertops. In the US,
I dislike microwaves. Like I dislike it. It's so much. Like it's not even funny.
everyone has this weird obsession with having a granite countertop, something that's thousands of dollars, has to be beautiful, shiny. Most of them have a different pattern in them. They can have like different sparkling type of rocks or minerals in them. And then they also have a fake granite countertop that's like half the price. It literally looks pretty much exactly the same as regular granite. Yeah, I don't know. There's this weird obsession with granite countertops that I don't really understand. Versus in Poland, it's typically just like a wood countertop with, you know, some type of lamination over it. Now the next one is walking into the house. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna take your shoes off or not? Well, if you're in Poland, you're taking your shoes off, and in the US, it really just depends on that specific family. Toilets, there's a big flush and a small flush in Poland, and in the US, there is just one flush. And then also, there's bidets in Poland, so you can clean after you go and take a shit. So the next one that's pretty cool is heated floors in like kind of the kitchen, living room type of area in Poland. I noticed that there are some houses that have this option, with also towel racks in the bathrooms. Whereas in the US, we don't really have that option. It's not even popular at all. I've never heard of anyone that has that, but there is some homes that have heated driveways. So in the winter, if you're in an area where it snows a lot, or you really just don't like the snow, you don't like shoveling and doing all of that, you can just turn on the switch to your heated driveway and it's gonna melt the snow. Of course,
heated driveways. I've never heard that. I've never heard that. Wow. I never even thought of something like that.
The plug outlets are different. In the US, we use a different one than
Oh,
in
yes.
Poland and Europe.
I know
and
for sure.
I'm pretty sure most of the world. Which, didn't we invent electricity? Why is that? I'm just kidding. But the next one is windows. And in the US, most of our windows are slide ups and slide downs. And there's typically like a bug screen as well that's on them. And you can also easily take those out if you wanted to. And typically in Poland, there's a push in and push out type of situation with the windows where you can let in a ton of air because the entire window is open instead of simply just half of it. That if you were to slide it, if that makes any sense. And then there's typically no bug screens in Poland. Poland homes also don't typically have AC as they're not fully needed. I know that most people in the summer are always saying, man, I really wish I had AC and stuff, but it seems like for the most part, it's really only a month or two that's, pretty bad, like hot wise, where it's, it's just always hot. But, for the most part, most Poles don't really have ACs in their homes. And I would argue that it's really not needed, especially with the price and all of that. But here in the US, a lot of homes do probably need AC, especially areas like the southeast. And the next one is washers and dryers. Now I know that in Poland they make washers and dryers built into one another, and that's really cool. Like you can wash your clothes and then the next setting, leave all your clothes in there and then it's going to dry it automatically. And maybe I haven't been looking at washers and dryers in the US, but I'm sure we have that option as well, but most families will simply just have a washer and a dryer. But in Poland, I would say the typical thing to do is to really just have a washer and then to dry your clothes on a rack after. So that's really it for this video. I wanted to talk about a bunch of different things that I didn't in the previous one, that I talked about the differences between homes. So I hope you guys found.
I'm even feeling like I'm behind time. I'm living under a rock. Especially the heated driveway. I never knew this existed. I would never think of something like that. I mean, to do a heated driveway, I mean, you really had to hate shoveling that snow to even put that in your house. I mean, like, wow. Damn, heated driveway. I'm gonna have to check how common is this in households. I would assume maybe not that much, and it has to be maybe areas that are really, really cold, and maybe the winter time is rather long or just naturally cold year round. So I would assume maybe those areas, or it could be people that just dislike shoveling snow and they just have to do it. But it's the first time I'm hearing that. I'm feeling a little stupid first time I'm hearing that. Like, I gotta ask some people in my country, have they heard of that? I can't be the only one. I want misery loves company. I want someone to be just like me, a few people to be like me and to be shocked, because I am. I love some of the features the Polish houses have, and by the looks of it, I think I would definitely choose Polish house. But the not having the bug screen is something concerning. I don't know how much of it's of bugs in terms of being a nuisance in Poland. I would assume maybe it's not that much, because that would be something that they definitely have more of. If it's not something that you have to go and try to figure out or make yourself, if it's there, you're gonna use it. So apparently it's not such a big deal in Poland in terms of bugs compared to other countries. In my country, man, you gotta have it, or you're gonna be in a lot of problems, especially when the sun goes down. Yeah, microwaves, I dislike microwaves. It's just health-wise for me, it's not ideal, man. It's not ideal. And the food that you put inside there tastes different when it comes out. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's rubbery or whatever you want to call it, but it certainly doesn't taste the same when you put it in there. Yeah, to each his own. To each his own. And the Polish thing I like, where you put the fence high up where people can't even see inside your house. This certainly, I love it when it comes to safetyness, also privacy. No, the monitoring of your environment, monitoring of your house becomes more difficult for people that are, up to no good. So definitely, this is something I like as well. But to each his own. Definitely, he went a little deeper in this one, and I must say, I enjoyed every bit of it. If you want to see that launch on the outro that I do, hit me up on Dice Reacts. We have the music reactions. This is where I'm going to be making my exit. So until next time, peace out.